first collective advice of the Prophet, as I said, I titled it this because it is the foundation. That as the Prophet of Allah, he says that is the beginning of everything. The beginning of everything that we do or that we should be doing should be based on our belief in Allah, the Prophet, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. Thereafter, the second advice, as I titled it, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we often take for granted, our health and our leisure time. And inshallah, based on that advice, we can maximize our health and also our leisure time. Tonight, the group of advices that I took from this hadith, this long hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to Abu Dhar, I kind of entitled it in this way: how to optimize life, or how to gain the most of life. Again, we live, we have our experiences, but how do we truly make the best of this life that we have? The verses that I chose that kind of also indicates upon this, and it alludes to that, are verse 23 and 24 of Surah Al-Kahf. So chapter 18 of the Quran, verses 23 and 24. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is speaking to the Prophet, and he tells the Prophet, don't say that you will do something tomorrow unless you precede that, or unless you include in that statement, insha'Allah. That by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I will do this. I will fulfill what I'm stating that I will do. And I just wanted to make it very clear, this is the proper meaning of insha'Allah. Not the insha'Allah that we mostly hear, like you ask somebody, hey, are you going to do this? Insha'Allah. Which we already know is like, oh, that means no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's telling us the proper meaning, that when we say insha'Allah, that what should that insha'Allah mean? He said, yes, you will do it. However, it should be by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Mufassirin, they stated that what does this truly mean, insha'Allah? On one hand, it is an acknowledgement from us, ourselves, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's authority and power over everything. That if it was not for the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we won't be able to do it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us the strength or the ability to do something, then it's impossible. We wouldn't be able to do it. So, doesn't mean no, means that we're acknowledging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. We're acknowledging also this blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he has given us not only the ability, the understanding of how to fulfill a certain task. So this is what this insha'Allah is about, and according to some of the Mufassirin as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told the Prophet to make that statement as well when he was asked about the companions of the cave, that how many were there, and the Prophet said that I will tell you later. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, just don't say it in that way, that I will tell you later or tomorrow, but say it that yes, you will tell them tomorrow or you will tell them later, insha'Allah. So, again, the most valuable point is that what? That it is something that you will do. And I will say this especially for parents, don't tell your kids this, they want this or that, and you say, oh, inshallah. And then your kids are like, oh, what is, oh, inshallah means no. So if my parents tell me this, oh, that means no. No, don't teach them. That's the wrong meaning of inshallah. So either just be very honest, like, oh, you know what, we can't do this right now. Maybe later we can do it. Maybe later, or after these particular things, or hey, if you fulfill this, meaning that I've asked you to do your chores or this and that, and then we will look into getting that. But don't just simply leave it as inshallah for them to get the wrong meaning of inshallah. So regarding that, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he teaches Abu Dhar that how to maximize this life. He says, Ya Abu Dhar, إياك والتسويف بأمالك. This is Abu Dhar. He says, be wary of procrastination. Don't put things off for later. فإنك بيومك ولست بما بعده. He says, why? Because you have today. Today is a day that if you're going to do something, then you do it today. Tasweef means that, I'll do it later. I'll think about it. If you have the ability and the timing is right, everything is right, then you do that action in this day. Because tomorrow is not guaranteed. We don't know. We have absolutely no idea. The Prophet of Allah, he points to one of the reasons that sometimes we procrastinate. He says, إِيَّاكَ وَالتَّسْوِيفِ بِأَمَلِكَ. Amal means that, you have hopes, or you're thinking that, maybe the situation will get better. Or maybe this, or maybe that. And those hopes or desires, or, false hopes or desires, they lead us sometimes to perhaps want to take the easy path. It's like, well, you know what? Let me see, maybe this thing is going to get easier. Maybe things will change, or sometimes it takes us on this path of, being lazy at times. Not really caring as much. And if that happens, sometimes, and this is what some of the ulama, they've kind of given a commentary of this. That's kind of interesting. I want to share that with you. They say that sometimes it leads to us neglecting our responsibility, especially those responsibilities that we have like a lot of time to do it. For example, if our alarm goes off in the morning, early in the morning for what? Of course, so I'm from Texas, so the salat comes in around like 5 o'clock. I came here and it's like, 3:58. Okay, mashallah. A little bit earlier. So if that alarm goes off and then we're like, you know what, let me hit the snooze. A little bit later, I'll pray. Keep hitting the snooze. Or maybe we hit it once, we fall into this deep sleep, and then what happens? When we get up, we're like, Fajr is out. It's gone. Now I have to make the qada. Why? Because we're hoping that, maybe let me just get that extra 10 minutes. But that extra 10 minutes turned into an hour. And we missed the Salatul Fajr. So we should not let those opportunities pass us. And particularly with the Salat. Yes, although we have a wide window for the Salat, even if it's Salatul Dhuhr or Asr, Maghrib, Isha, inshallah, we should try our best to pray that salat on time. There's one of the hadith, and again, just to show you that our hope and expectations shouldn't get in the way of us delaying things, that procrastination. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, especially when it comes to salat, he says, لا ينال شفاعتنا من استخف بالصلاة. He says, that person who takes the salat lightly, they won't receive our shafa'ah. Again, as the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, we're expecting, we have our shortcomings. We all know our own shortcomings. But then we expect that, we should try to, that perhaps we'll get the shafa'ah of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, that will kind of, cover up our shortcomings. It will give us that extra. But in order to gain that, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu said that one of the conditions is that we don't take the salat lightly. Now pay attention to the words of the Imam. He didn't say that we leave the salat. He says, "Man istakhaff bis salat." You simply take it lightly. You don't take it serious. You don't take it serious. And if we truly look at the expectation that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal they have from us. And again, this is one of the reasons why we come and we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, his Ahlul Bayt and his companions every year. Why? Because truly, if we walked in the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, we would be like what Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he said. There's a place, I'm just going to give this hadith briefly. He says, don't be among those who expect us to give shafa'ah for you, but rather be among those individuals who are able to give shafa'ah for others. This is what the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afusatu wasalam. When we say really we love the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afusatu wasalam, then that means that our mouths should be in a situation that we're for the Imam of our time, like the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi afusatu wasalam. And of course, there's no comparison, but nonetheless we become inspired by them to do what? To be like them. When it comes to the salat, and we all know this point, just a reminder, when it comes to the salat, what happens in Karbala? What happens in Karbala? Because Imam Hussein and his companions, his Ahlul Bayt, they're under the arrows of the enemy, that they stop the salat? No. They make the salat right there on the battlefield while the arrows are still coming. Again, this is the level that we should be aiming for. Sometimes that neglect comes, that amal, it comes with regards to obligations that we must perform immediately. That this is the time for that obligation, but because we're not really taking it seriously, and sometimes unfortunately we get these questions as the ulama that, oh, you know what, my time of my khums was here, and I missed it, and what should I do now? How do I make that up? Even sometimes at a point that, oh, well, you know, this time I think, I was able to go to Hajj, but I delayed it. I said, no, I'll go next year. It's like, subhanallah, man istata'a. When you reach that ability to go to Hajj, it is obligatory in that year. Not that, oh, I'll delay it one more year. Why? Because, my buddy, my friend, my cousin will be able to go with me. No. It's your duty and your responsibility to make that Hajj. Or, again, for our sisters at the age that you become baligh, that it's obligatory to wear the hijab. Not to wait, it's like, after I finish my prime years and I get a little bit older, then I'm going to wear the hijab. No, this is something that is our responsibility and our duty. Don't delay it hoping that, maybe at some point that I'll do it. Sometimes we become neglectful with regards to those obligations, as I said, that, it's obligation that we only have a short period of time to do it. Like fasting in Ramadan. Or making up the fast if we had a legitimate excuse to make it up, and we have to make it up before the next Ramadan comes in. Don't neglect these things. This is the moment. If we're going to maximize our life as the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells Abu Dhar, he says, do not procrastinate. Iyaka wa taswif. Don't put things off for later if you are able to do it. He says, فَإِنْ يُكُونَ غَدٌ لَكْ فَكُنْ فِي الْغَدِّ كَمَا كُنْتَ فِي الْيَوْمِ. And then he tells Abu Dhar, he says that if you live to see tomorrow, then tomorrow should be the same as today with regards to that advice. That what you're able to do in that day, do it. Take care of it. Don't put it off to tomorrow. So do things in a timely manner. He says, وَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ غَدْ لَكَ لَمْ تَنْدَمْ عَلَى مَا فَرَّطْتَ فِي الْيَوْمِ. He says, why? Because he says, this is part of the secret of that. He says that if you don't have tomorrow, he says, then you will not regret what you did in that day. You will not regret what you did in that day. That when you enter into the grave, you know that, oh, you know what? I had this responsibility, I had that responsibility, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And so therefore, when I transition from this life to the next, then you're like, oh, well, there was something I could have done, but I didn't do it. That reminds me of one of the encounters that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had. Just to show you the importance, and this is with regards to repaying one's debts. So one of the companions was Shaheed. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he asked someone about the Shaheed. He says, is there anyone from among his tribe? And one person said, yes. He says, why? He says that because he's in a point, and again we know the Shaheed, the maqam of a Shaheed, but if they have haqqun nas upon them, that haqqun nas has to be dealt with. If someone has a right over them, then that right has to be fulfilled. So the Prophet of Allah, he says that he's at the cusp of receiving a great deal of blessings in the barzakh. He says, but right now he can't receive it. He says, why? He says, because there's a dain. He owes someone his money, and that dain has to be paid. So if you pay it upon his behalf, then that blessing and barakah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for that shaheed, that will come to him. So yes, when we are able to fulfill our duty, then we should fulfill it. And this is why also the Prophet, almost in a conclusion of that, he says, Ya Aba Dhar, kam min mustaqbilin yawman la yastakmilu. He says, how many people expect that, you know what, I'm going to live out this day as I've done every other day. But that day is not completed for them. وَمَنْتَظِرُ غَدًا لَا يَبْلُغُ. And a person is waiting for tomorrow. Again, we do this. We have our phones and we put our schedule in. Oh, tomorrow I have to do this. We don't know if that's going to happen. Doesn't mean that we don't plan. No, we plan those things. But there's no guarantee that we will have that day. He says, and truly, if we understood this, as he's telling Abu Dhar, he says, if we truly understood this, he says, then what will happen? That we will dislike these drawn out hopes and expectation. And don't get me wrong, because we have to have a balance in this. There's no imbalance being talked about here, and that's one of the important things that we have to understand, that there's a balance in life. That doesn't mean that we don't have dreams and hopes and expectations. No, have dreams, hopes, and expectation. But we take advantage and we optimize the time that we have right now. If there's something that we can do now, then we do it. We don't put it off. Just to also be clear about that this balance that we have to have, and as one individual came to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, and mistakenly understood something that he heard or that was narrated from Abu Dhar. Not from the Prophet, but just about Abu Dhar, his own character. He says, oh, I've heard that Abu Dhar made the statement that he loves 3 things that no one else loves. And so Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu asks him, he says, what are these 3 things that you heard that Abu Dhar he loves that no one else loves? He said that, I heard that Abu Dhar, he loves death when other people don't like death. He loves poverty when other people don't like poverty. And he loves calamity, bala, when other people don't like calamity. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu he says that, no, take the right understanding that why did Abu Dhar make this statement? What was the nature of Abu Dhar? He says, yes, he would love death in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over what? Life and disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That he would love poverty in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over wealth in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would love bala, calamities, difficulties in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over having an easy life that is filled with the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes, unfortunately, we hear these things and we take them out of context. So Imam Sadiq alayhi wasalam, he wants to make sure that that companion Shu'aib who came to him with it, that we take it in context, not out of context. Don't misinterpret the Quran itself or the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. And that is very important with regards to this next advice that the Prophet of Allah, he gives Abu Dhar. He says, Ya Abu Dhar, he says, كن كأنك في الدنيا غريب أو كعابر سبيل وعد نفسك من أصحاب القبور. He says, Ya Abu Dhar, he says, be or live in this world as if you're a stranger. Live as if you're a stranger. As someone who's simply passing life. And again, that stranger doesn't mean that you neglect your responsibilities and duties in this world. It means that you don't become so attached to this world that what happens, it makes it difficult for you to transition to the next world. If you want to see that gharib fi dunya, again, this is important to understand that where this also fits in context of the Quran. In Surah Yasin, so chapter 36 of the Quran, roughly around verse 21 to about verse 26, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he points out one of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Habib Najjar, or Mu'min Ali Yasin as he's spoken about. This is the individual, it says, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ. So that individual who came from the furthest point of the city. And what this meant is that, again, not like the cities we have now that are open. Most of the cities, they had kind of walls around it for protection at that time. So Habib Najjar, he lived kind of like at that furthest point of the city. Kind of like right on the outskirts of the city. So maybe what we would call the suburbs today. Maybe a little bit quiet, not very noisy. But he came from this point to the middle of the city. Why? Because he heard that individuals, they had rejected the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent. Not only did they reject the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, that they had planned to murder and to kill these prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at that point, Habib Najjar, again, he knew, he understood that, no, it is my responsibility, it is my duty to advocate justice. That's one, these prophets should not be killed. And number two, they're here for a purpose to guide humanity. So Habib Najjar, he came running into the city to fulfill his social responsibility, his social duty. Yes, and what happened? He was martyred. He was killed. And then he says, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates in the Quran, he says that, oh, I wish that the people understood that what was the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he shed upon me. وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكَرَّمِينَ. How did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor me? By me making the sacrifice by fulfilling my duty in society. In fact, this is the path of all of the shaheeds, the shuhada. In some sense, they are gharib. Again, do we not say this about Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam? That he was a gharib, that he was alone. Muslim ibn Aqil, again a gharib, he was left alone. Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, gharib al-ghuraba, again the one who was alone. So being gharib doesn't mean that we neglect our responsibility, our duty to society, our duty to humanity. Doesn't mean that we live this ascetic life where we're not connected with anyone. It also means that we don't live such a worldly life, and this is the advice of Rasulullah, that we can't let go. That we can't let go. And again, that is the example of the shuhada. That is the example of the shuhada. That when they understand that this is a time that I have to make a sacrifice, I'm going to make that sacrifice. I'm going to fulfill my duty, whatever that duty may be, whatever that responsibility may be, I'm going to fulfill it. I'm not going to be aloof from the society, but at the same time, I'm not going to be so attached that when I have to make that sacrifice, I won't be able to. That is the true meaning of this advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Abu Dhar. Which means that when we find ourselves upon a crossroad, where we have to make a choice, and sometimes that choice will be very difficult, then what is the choice that we make? There are individuals in history, and particularly with regards to the events that have led up to Karbala, and even in Karbala, that people were at a crossroads. They had to make a choice. One of those individuals, for example, Umar ibn Sa'ad. But when Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, that when he was in Karbala and also the army they had came, Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, when we read the history, and sometimes in the Majlis you won't get the entire history, but read the history. Take time to, again, in your leisure time, take some time to truly understand what was happening. Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, he went and he sat with Umar ibn Sa'ad to negotiate peace. To negotiate that, look, we don't need to fight. We don't need to enter into a war. But then there was a command that came to Umar ibn Sa'ad to what? No, break this off. And you need to engage in war with Imam Hussein. Umar ibn Sa'ad, he was in a position that he's at a crossroad. Do I side with Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl Jannah, someone that I know that is guaranteed paradise, or do I side with one who's a Khalifa? He's going to murder the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shimr, also a person at that crossroad. Very interesting story as well. In the battle of Siffin, he's with Imam Ali alayhi salatu, standing with Imam Ali. Against who? Against Muawiyah, the father of Yazid. But when it came to Karbala, where was he at? The most despicable and disgraceful person of that time in Karbala, who decapitated Imam Hussein. But at one point he was at a crossroad. He had to make the choice that, what am I going to do? Zubair, as I mentioned before as well, as Imam Ali alayhi salatu, he says, Minna Ahl al-Bayt. He was from among us. Until one point that he changed, where he turned against the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu. And of course the one that inshallah that tonight we will commemorate as well, Hur. You had a choice to make. We all have a choice to make. When we are at that crossroads, that will we be among those individuals who may be at a time that we are gharib. And this is one of the things that, again, just also last night it was good that one of the youth, they mentioned this, is, yeah, sometimes we're seeing that, unfortunately, in this time there seems to be an heightened aspect of Islamophobia. I don't like that word, by the way, but I'm gonna preserve it for another time because it's a misnomer. Unfortunately, we shouldn't get caught up in those names, but anyway, there's a heightened sense of misunderstanding of Islam. But to understand that ghurba, those who may feel in the sense that they are alone, I just want to give this one beautiful hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his companion Ibn Mas'ud. He He tells Ibn Mas'ud, he says, Al-Islam bada'a ghariban wa sayu'udu ghariba. He says, Islam, it began in a state that was strange. He says, and it will return back to that mood that is strange. Perhaps we've heard this in the Majlis before, but we need to understand that full hadith, that why the Prophet said it is strange and it will return to strange. And he tells Ibn Mas'ud, he says that why would it return strange? He says that because when you follow that sunnat of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wassalam, he says that this would be that strangeness that people will see. Why is that strange? Because when we look at society in general, just ask this question: who is truly advocating for justice? And when you stand for justice and you advocate for justice, then it is strange. Why? Because people don't understand it. They think that, well, just, I want to grab everything I get. How come you don't want to grab everything you can get? How come you're not attached to this world to the point that you will do anything for it? Lie, steal, cheat, kill, plunder. That when you don't have that mentality, and you have the mentality, as we mentioned the other day, that everything is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People don't comprehend that. The enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they couldn't comprehend that. He says, you know what? If you want money, whatever you want, stop preaching what you're preaching, and we'll give you everything you want. The Prophet says, you know what? If you put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, no, I don't want it. Truly, that statement of Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam, as I mentioned, I said that I get choked up every time I mention it. Again, they don't understand that. That you murder a person's entire family, and he's still willing to offer you what? A path to paradise. He says, my dua is answered, and you know that. He said, yes. He says, leave me now. Don't send yourselves to hell because of me. I will make dua that Allah forgives you for all of this. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. That is ghareeb. Why? Because you think that, man, I did all of this to this person, and what? For sure he's going to want to exact revenge upon me. For sure he's going to want to do this and that. When you say, no, you know what? I understand that you're a creation of Allah, and I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to save you. That is the ghurbat that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam he's talking about. So Rasulullah, just this last part of the advice of Rasulullah to Abu Dhar, in order to understand how do we maximize this life. There's one more aspect about it. One, as we said, to take advantage of the time that you have right now. Don't delay anything. And then in addition to that, he says, Ya Abu Dhar, إذا أصبحت فلا تحدث نفسك بالمساء وإذا أمسيت فلا تحدث نفسك بالصباح. In other words, reflect upon death. He says, oh Abu Dhar, he says, if you woke up in the morning, don't think that you will live to the afternoon. Again, this is also, if we understand that, we won't procrastinate. So, oh, you know what, I need to do this morning, but yeah, I'll wait till this afternoon to do it. No, do it then. If you have the ability, if everything is there for you to take care of that business, take care of it. He says, if you live through the afternoon, he says, don't convince yourself that you're going to wake up in the morning. You may not. He says, and again, he re-emphasizes to Abu Dhar about his health. He says, وَخُذْ مِنْ صِحَّتِكَ قَبْلَ سُقْمِ. So take care of your health and your life. Then he tells Abu Dhar, he says, because you don't know that when the angel of death, he will call for you. He tells Abu Dhar, he says, be among those individuals who count yourself among the Ahl al-Qabr. Be among those individuals who, you say that, you know what? Soon, I will return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will be among those individuals who will be in the grave. I'll be among those individuals that I will be asked those questions by the two angels. I'll be among those individuals, as the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this grave will now be my new home. And what a home. What a home. What a home it will be. It will be what we make it to be. As the Prophet of Allah, he says every day the grave calls out with 5 things. Says that I am a house that is lonely. There's loneliness there. So bring with yourselves a companion. I am a house that is dark. Dhalma. So bring with it a lantern, a light. I am a house that has a floor that is just simply dirt. There's no carpet. So bring with you something to cover it. I'm a house that is impoverished. There's nothing there. There's no decoration. But bring with you something that will decorate this home. I'm a home that could be infested with snakes or scorpions. So bring with it something that you will be able to repel these things. And the Prophet of Allah, he explains what those are. He says, this grave is a lonely place, and your companion should be the Quran. That if you recite the Quran, mashallah, subhanAllah, beautiful recitation tonight, that this will be your companion in the grave. It is a dark place, and what will give it light? Your prayers at night, the Salatul Layl. It is a place where the floor is just simply of dirt. Then what will cover that dirt? Your good deeds. It is a place where it is not decorated, it's impoverished. But what will make that place decorated? Your statement of La ilaha illallah, remembering Allah. It is a place where it could be infested. So what repels that infestation? Your sadaqah. Your sadaqah. That grave, that again, the shuhada, that when they are sacrificing themselves for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they understand this. Among those who are shaheed, before we talk about the shaheed of this night, but just to see, to understand that how the shuhada were thinking. One of those individuals was Bishr, Muhammad ibn Bishr. That before the event of Karbala, what happened? His son was arrested by the Abbasids, by the Umayyads, by the government. So Imam Hussein alayhi wasalam, he told him, he says that, Anta fi hil min bay'ati. He says, I removed my bay'at, my allegiance. Go and take care of your son, free him. But listen to the words of Muhammad ibn Bishr. He says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, akalatni as-saba hayyan in faraqtuka. He says, I wish that I was eaten alive by a lion. That If I separate myself from you, then I'm ready to simply to be eaten alive by a lion. He says, it is worse for me to separate from you than that. This is the sacrifice. And the shuhada, they knew that this was the moment to optimize their life, to support Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. And on that night of Tasu'ah, but none of them said that they will leave and part from Imam Hussein. But on the day of Ashura, there was one who was not in that tent with Imam Hussein to give that commitment. But he understood right before that battle was to begin that he was at a crossroad. He knew who was standing across the field, across that battlefield. The son of Fatima Zahra. That early as Hur, he had stopped Imam Hussein and ushered him to Karbala. In that encounter where the men of Hur and Hur, they were thirsty. And what happened? Imam Hussein gave the water to Hur. There was an exchange, there was something that Imam Hussein, he said to Hur. He says, "Taqalatka ummak." He says, your mother would be ashamed of you that what you're doing today. That what you are planning to do. Hur, he responded, he says that, he says, I would have a response for you, oh Hussein, but I know who your mother is. I know who your mother is, and there's nothing that I can say bad about her. So that moment before the battle on the plains of Karbala, when Hur, he asked the men, he says, are you really going to fight Hussein? And they said yes. At one point in Hur, he got his horse. He says, I'm going to go. I'm going to give my horses some water. As he mounted his horse, he stated, Inni wallah أخير نفسي بين الجنة والنار والله لا أختار على الجنة شيئا. He says, I see myself at the crossroads between paradise and hell, and I will never choose anything over paradise. So they said, Hur. He gave one kick to his horse and ran towards Imam Hussein. They said, as the horse of Hur approached the camp of Imam Hussein, they said that Hur, he dismounted and he walked towards Imam Hussein. He says, إني قد جئتك تائبا مما كان مني إلى ربي فهل من توبة. He tells Imam Hussein, he says that I'm coming towards you. I am making tawbah. That, oh Hussein, that do you see that there's tawbah for me? Will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for bringing you here to this place? Imam Hussein, as the leader of humanity at the time, he says, Na'am yatub Allah alayk. He says, oh yes, Huriam, Allah will forgive you for what you've done. So Huri asked Imam Hussein, he says, since I brought you to this place, allow me to be the first to go out and to sacrifice for you. Imam Hussein granted Hur this privilege and this honor. He said, Hur, he went out upon the battlefield. He was reciting this poem. Inni ana al-Hur ومأوى الضيف اضربوا في أعناقكم بالسيف. He says, I am Hur, standing to shelter my guests, sheltering Imam Hussein by striking your necks. عن خير من حل بلاد الخيف أضربكم ولا أرى من حيف. Hur said that I will defend Imam Hussein. He is the best person who set foot upon this plain. I will strike you down for the sake of justice, and I do not see in that any shame. They said, Hur, he went out upon the battlefield and he fought bravely, but how much could one man fight against an army? They ganged up on Hur, they began to hit him from every side, until he fell from his horse, his steady steed. As he did so, he called out to Hussein, Assalamu alayka ya Mawlay, Assalamu alayka ya ibn Rasulillah, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah. They said Imam Hussein, he rode out into the battlefield to fight the enemies that were surrounding Hur. He dismounted from his horse, he placed the head of Hur in his lap, he looked down upon Hur. He says, Anta al-Hur, kama sammatka ummak, Anta al-Hur fi dunya wal-akhirah. He says, you are Hur, you are free today as your mother named you, O Hur. You are Hur, you are free in this world and the next. According to the Maktal as well, they said Imam Hussein, he honored something. He honored Hur with something that he honored no other shaheed with. What was that? They said Imam Hussein, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a handkerchief. This was the handkerchief of Fatima Zahra. He placed this upon the forehead of Hur. Remember that moment at Hur, he said to Imam Hussein, he said, I would respond back to you that when you said my mother would be ashamed that what I have done to Hussein. So Imam Hussein was showing that now Hur, he has been honored. Not only did he make his mother proud, but he has also made Fatima Zahra proud on this day by making that sacrifice. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا واقضي حوائجنا واشف مرضانا وارحم امواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه وحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. ماتم حسين، يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
صلوات. أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا. Together. أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا وهواء ونيران وماء مليكها الحسين ذبيح كربلاء تراب ابن أبيه هوى نوح بنيه والماء دمع في عين زينب والماء دمع في عين زينب والنار نار في قلب زينب أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا ألا نوح لمن دماه غسله وآلاف السيوف تدور حوله غريب دون معين ضمي دون معين مذبوح عطشان عار مسلم مذبوح عطشان عار مسلم والصدر ميدان للخيل تلعب أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أتى في الناحية هوى على الرمال يدير طرفه لخيمة العيال رآهن برزنا له تنوح حزنا من ألف طعنا عليه يصعب نار تشب بثوب زينب أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا أيوا حسينا حسين أي جراح ودين مستباح وسنة الكتاب على سن الرماح أتوا به هديا إلى قصر أمية بالخيزرانا الثغر يضرب وكل هذا رأته زينب أيوا حسينا 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 صلوات بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيب الله السلام عليك يا خيرة خلق الله ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى يا أم المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام على التسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي الباقر وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي الجواد وعلي بن محمد الهادي والحسن بن علي العسكري والحجة القائم المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله أمره ومخرجه السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.